third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen. Izzo's dying for a moving screen.
It's that dreaded moving screen.
Welcome back, everybody, to a long-anticipated edition of the Moving Screen podcast. I am Brendan Quinn with The Athletic. It is July 7th, 2020, here with the great Dylan Burkhart, Hoops. Dylan, I would say long time no talk, but that's not actually the case.
It's been a minute since we've published a podcast, but maybe not since we've gone through the act of recording a podcast.
All right. So to everyone who has been freaking out for a while, justifiably so, we'll say, we in fact did not go, whatever it's been, 6 weeks without recording a podcast. We recorded 2 different podcasts on 2 different dates, both of which ended up being deleted. One by Dylan, one by me. Very on brand for the moving screen. And then I was away when Emoni Bates committed, and I was on a golf beat when other stuff has happened. But the general message here is to get off our backs with the tweets.
And now that Tschetter committed, we're going to finally bring you guys a podcast.
We're going to give you an hour on Tschetter right now, and that's it. That's
the plan for today?
Dylan, how are you?
I'm good. I've been watching some TBT, a little Isaac Haas, Evan Boudreau. I mean, what else do you need in the middle of July?
That's the basketball I want.
It's better than no basketball.
Is Boudreau lighting it up?
He's trying hard out there and
giving
his best.
Wow. Any other great Big Ten names that you've come across? I haven't watched a second of it.
Marcus Keene from Central Michigan has been one of the stars of the tournament so far. The Ohio State team, the good Ohio State team, plays tomorrow. Andrew Dakic's team, I think they won their first game.
Is he coaching or playing?
I believe he just coaches. He might play a little bit. I didn't catch that game. But lots of Big Ten names from the past. Andrew White was playing for the Syracuse team.
Wow.
Old Nebraska shooter.
Yes.
All sorts of old names. Good stuff if you ever get bored on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, I've been mainly watching golf, writing about golf. There's way too much shit going. It went from absolutely nothing for like 2 months to somehow randomly in 2 weeks just shit happening left and right. So good times. But we are going to get into all of the news today, mainly on the recruiting front. Michigan and Michigan State both adding names all over the place. We will start, of course, with Michigan State because everyone has been calmly asking for it, for us to get into Emoni Bates. And today, Max Christie joining Pierre Brooks in the 2021 class. Things are rolling in East Lansing on the recruiting front, but let's start with Emoni Bates. I was literally in between rounds while playing 36 at Boyne when I got word that this was happening, random announcement on ESPN, and was genuinely stunned that he was potentially announcing a college. I thought it was going to be some kind of I'm signing with this agency, right, or I'm doing this or whatever it might be, a G League thing or something. But lo and behold, Michigan State it is. And talking with people there, the staff and whatnot were not surprised that he's picked Michigan State. Everyone was pretty sideswiped by the timing. It was not expected to happen right then. I have some theories, but I'm kind of interested for your immediate take.
The immediate take is that Emoni Bates is a transcendent talent. I think everyone would say at this point in time, obviously anything can happen. We've seen amazing talents go in every different direction from the time they're 15, 16. But if he comes to Michigan State, I mean, that's a team that you're going to just say, well, hello, let's do this thing and let's make a run at this, right? Like you don't get that chance you don't get it very often, if ever, right? You could coach forever and never get that chance to coach.
Mm-hmm.
The more cynical reaction is probably, why was it tied into an announcement of his father opening a prep school, and what exactly is going on with all that and what it means moving forward? Because as much as Emoni Bates is committed to Michigan State, I'm not sure the path forward for Emoni Bates next 3 years is necessarily set in stone.
No doubt. The cynical is a good word for it, and that was kind of my immediate reaction was, and having spoken to some people on the TV side of things, like, we want to announce the creation of this school and the roster and so on and so forth. And I don't know if ESPN is putting that on the air during SportsCenter Live. You say you're committing to Michigan State, though, and suddenly you're getting that airtime for sure. So that was kind of my, all right, what doesn't, or what, how do the pieces kind of fit together here beyond the obvious? Because that's usually the case. So that was my guess. That doesn't mean that's certainly the case, but there is a lot of moving pieces here. And I think just to jump from basically as of 3 months ago, no one would say Emoni Bates was playing college basketball, to suddenly now you've got people, my man Graham Couch up there, talking about him playing 2 years of college basketball. Like, how has this all happened? So, I don't know. I kind of the whole time, anytime I've been asked about Emoni Bates, I've always said I will believe that he plays college basketball when I physically am at a game watching him play college basketball. That this is not meant to take away from Michigan State, by the way. Like, they put in the work. They're making a lot of programs look like idiots for basically punting on this. They've been recruiting him since the 6th grade. And if this thing actually happens, I mean, Izzo's going to look like a damn genius.
On the off chance that, if there's any chance that he ends up playing at Michigan State and you're every other school that didn't recruit him, I mean, what the hell were you doing at 8 a.m. at Peach Jam except sleeping off a hangover or something? Because, I mean, to be fair, Michigan State did put in the work, did put in the effort. Michigan State's been recruiting him like he was going to play college basketball, and no one else took the time to do it. And it's clear that relationship between Emoni and Michigan State is strong, from his relationship to the coaches, his father's relationship with the coaches, the team, other players on Michigan State and Emoni, right? Like, everything fits about Emoni Bates with Michigan State. It's just whether everything fits about Emoni Bates and playing in college, and that's going to be the big question, right?
Right. And everyone's putting it together of name, image, and likeness would potentially be in effect by the time that he gets to college, and that there's money there to be made, which could potentially be the case, if at the name, image, and likeness stuff is in full effect and he is playing college basketball. Like, no one has any idea what this is going to look like. And there's a committee already, the 400th committee is in place trying to figure out exactly what this will look like. He would have the highest value humanly possible, I would think, in all of college sports, football, basketball, whatever, because he's been a commodity since he was in like 7th grade. So, maybe that's something that does facilitate him going to the college route. But at the same time, there's going to be plenty of money to be made in a variety of places if your name is Emoni Bates.
Yeah, so the name, image, and likeness conversation is interesting to me because there will be a point where that impacts college sports, but the NCAA right now is doing everything in its power to put some kind of restrictor plate, some sort of limit on what you can actually make, right?
Right.
Because there's very much an attitude of, well, the same people that will sponsor all of these student athletes that we don't have to pay right now are the ones that are writing our paychecks. So I have a hard time imagining the initial name, image, likeness rule that goes into effect, however it works out, to be a better financial option than any financial option that isn't limited by some sort of NCAA legislation. So I'm a little skeptical on that. But again, we also just don't know what that'll look like. I think the really interesting development out of this whole thing is just going to be what happens with the NBA's rules, because Emoni is particularly young for his class. That's where the whole idea of him reclassifying and then potentially playing 2 years comes from. That, to me, doesn't quite add up. I don't understand why you would start a prep school and then only run the prep school for essentially 1 year. One of the big benefits of starting your own prep school is you can deal with how the prep school is sponsored and everything else, and that's essentially above board. I don't know. You'll control a lot when Emoni is at Ipsy Prep, a lot less than you'd potentially control when he's in college. So I don't completely get the plan of, oh, well, this obviously means he's going to reclassify. Where do you fall in that? And then again, the NBA rules could change basically overnight, which would also
right. That's the thing. I mean, 2020, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. 2022 has always kind of been the target year that people have seen as being the point of the rule being changed. And I think Adam Silver actually said that.
It was. I feel like it's less and less. Like it feels like it's less likely to actually be.
Like this is what always led to the assumptions, right, around Bates. Mm-hmm. That, okay, 2022 will be the year that matches up with him. I agree with you in part about, like, what's the point of going all this trouble of making a school if it's only for 1 year? But at the same time, if there's anything to be gained out of him playing in high school for even 1 year, his value is so high right now that what are you getting out of him playing at Lincoln, right? Like, you might as well do what you can. You know, this is going to be financed by shoe money, obviously, which to me, total sidebar, I have questions of what his NCAA eligibility will look like. That's just me. But like, it's something worth considering. So I don't even remember where the hell this thing started with the last question.
Essentially reclassifying, essentially.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. The bigger question is what the NCAA or is what the NBA does with its rules. And I don't think anybody even knows when that could even be dealt with at this point with the amount of other shit that's going on. They're trying to figure out how to play basketball games right now. Like, is anyone even discussing this? No, they're not.
So, gun to your head, Emoni Bates, over under games played in East Lansing and for Michigan State.
I would still take under 0 if I had a bet. But I don't think I'd put the percentages at like 30%, which is high, I think, when you are talking about Emoni Bates.
Yeah, because that's a 30% chance at the winning lottery ticket basically for a season, right? Exactly. So that's what you're looking at. And
I was talking to someone over there, like, it's a win-win for Michigan State. Like, it's good to have Emoni Bates committed. You can recruit with, around, whatever. And if you don't get him, fine, right? Like, you don't lose anything. You have huge publicity, blue blood status, blah, 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 in terms of this pickup. And if you do get him, I mean, like you said, it's, go win a national championship.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the situation. I think you also have the prep school where several kids are transferring or whatever else, which is only going to probably help lead to more attention or whatever else for Michigan State and that relationship. I mean, it makes sense as far as, I don't see any downside. Obviously, how can you have downside to taking commitment from potentially the number one player in high school basketball, regardless of class? It's always going to be a good decision, right? You already have seen maybe some of that momentum lead into Max Christie. I know he said it's not necessarily because of that, but all of a sudden you have this wave of recruiting and everyone's talking about Michigan State recruiting, which is exactly what you want to create on the recruiting trail.
Right. So you want to talk about Christie, or do you?
I think we can get into Max Christie.
Yeah. What a score.
He's one of my favorite players in the class. I think you look at his game, a lot of guys who are ranked really high aren't necessarily ranked because they're great basketball players or basketball players that are like immediately translate to playing college basketball. They're ranked because maybe they can do 2 or 3 things that other guys can't do, but maybe they aren't like complete, smart college basketball players. Max Christie is the kind of guy who shoots a bunch of threes, actually makes them. Mm-hmm. He shoots off the dribble, actually makes shots. He plays like a player who's ready to play college basketball more than a player who has a couple tools that might be valuable to the NBA. And he happens to be 6'6", long, athletic, and can just hit shots. Like, shooting is almost undervalued in high school recruiting and overvalued in the NBA. Christie's a guy who can already hit shots at a high level, and that's a huge weapon to have as far as the impact that he can make as a 5-star, potentially one-and-done freshman, right?
Yeah, his high school coach didn't have the exact numbers, but he said it was probably 38, 39% he shot last year on threes. That basically matches what he did with USA Basketball last time he played any competition there. So you're right. I mean, he is a guy who you are not – you can say, yeah, add some muscle and all this way, but like skill-wise – there's very few holes. There's not a lot of like has to develop this, has to develop that, or this area of his game is going to be a big, going to need a big step forward to go play Big Ten basketball. He is walking in the door starting. I think he's a guy who you're going to see all over the place because his skill set is so varied that you will see him out of ball screens. You will see him attacking as a slasher. You will see him I think being an absolute dominant force on the break, both with the ball and without the ball, has potential to be a high-level defender. He's got a wingspan for days. He's quick. He's long. There's so much to like. And today was the first time I ever spoke to him one-on-one, and I was like blown. It was like talking to like a 30-year-old man. He was really, really sharp. His coach couldn't stop raving about him. Family is his basketball family. His mom scored over 1,000 points at Northwestern. His dad played Division II ball in Wisconsin. Mom is now runs a psychiatry office, I think, something like that. And dad is a Delta pilot. So, grew up around the game. He was a ball boy at Northwestern, working alongside Pat Baldwin Jr. They were both ball boys at the same time. Now both are top 15 players in their class, and Northwestern will get neither, which is impressive. So, I mean, it's not only a great coup in terms of the player that he is, but also who you beat. You beat 2 fellow Big Ten schools with local ties and, pretty solid inroads to possibly get him. And then you beat the boogeyman. To actually get a kid from that Duke legitimately wanted, it says something. This is like across the board, one of the best commitments. I mean, this and Miles Bridges in terms of the last, 6, 7, 8, 9 years.
Probably throw Jaren Jackson in there too.
Well, no. At the time of the commitment, though. Okay. Jaren Jackson became Jaren Jackson. And when he committed, it was a big deal. But it was not this. Yeah.
Yeah, Max Christie's been Max Christie since like the 7th grade. He's a guy who has been kind of the next chosen one of the Chicago area for a while. He's been highly touted, and he's basically lived up to it. He played 17U with the Illinois Wolves last year. Which is a really pretty much a top quality AAU team. I think they do things the right way. I think he's basically checks all the boxes of the kind of 5-star kid you want to recruit, right? He's a good, like, he just fits, right? He seems like a kid who's going to want to go to college. He said as much when he was talking on his commitment interview. He's the guy if you're going to go fishing in the deep end for a 5-star kid, this is the kind of kid you want to get. He will fit into whatever team. He wants to be coached. That's all you wrote in your article. Mm-hmm. So it's just pretty much the perfect signing as far as if you're going to go get one of those guys, and that's where you want to be.
It's funny, like he's a Duke kid. You know what I mean? Like he fits the bill, like, of what you kind of expect, high academics and the blah, blah, blah. And, Michigan State got the Duke kid. And it's been a long time coming. So this is, not – obviously Emoni Bates is huge, but in terms of the fact that we know 100% this guy's playing college basketball at Michigan State.
It's 2 years. But
like, I would say you could make a case that this is just as big of news as Emoni Bates' commitment.
Yeah, I mean, and it's potentially more relevant news, because even if Emoni Bates or more quickly relevant news, right, as far as the 2021 season more than the 2022 season if Bates stays in that class. So
what do you think about the fact that he has played high school ball kind of in a rather mediocre setting? So for those who don't know, like, we are referring to him as a Chicago kid. I mean, he's not playing like Chicago high school basketball, though, really. He plays out in the northwest suburbs. It's kind of a different deal. Like, he doesn't play with any other Division I kids.
He also plays Under Armour, not Nike.
It's just a question. I'm not making it a knock. I'm just curious.
I don't think it's too low. It's not like he's playing in Wyoming, right? Like, again, he has performed so well against Under Armour. The top Under Armour kids generally play well, even if overall the league maybe isn't quite as deep. Like, I do think a lot of kids go play in the Under Armour circuit where they can kind of be a big fish in a smaller pond. And so you'll see like 5 guys who just crush the league. And he was one of those guys. He played great last year. You have to give him credit. Yeah. I wouldn't say that's a huge reason to worry about him by any means.
I tend to agree.
Illinois Wolves kids play great in college basketball. There've been all sorts of kids from that program have come and gone to do really well in the Big Ten and elsewhere.
Right. Like, because we're going to talk about Will Tschetter later, right? And he's playing in an hour and a half outside of Minneapolis, in some, small league that, he's not playing any Division I kids, and he's, scoring 1 million points and all that stuff. So,
Isaiah Barnes, same thing. He's a kid who plays the Illinois Wolves and plays in the Chicago suburbs. I mean, Chicago suburbs aren't Chicago City, but it's not like you're playing no one, right? Like, there's, I think you're probably overrating it as far as what it would mean for him, but I don't know. Is that something that you think is worth worrying about, Christie?
No, no. I was just kind of curious your thoughts. When I look at Christie, the film does not lie. He's a phenomenal talent and will be probably one undone. Like you said, he's been the real deal since grade school. Got the pedigree, and he's played up, right? I like the fact that he's played up in age, and that his size, that he probably has another inch or two to grow. When I talked to him today, he said he's put on 15 pounds in the last year, went from about 170 to 185. Like, he was super thin when he was younger. Mm-hmm. But he's going to put the work in. I think he's a really heady kid. This is as close, I feel like, to like a can't miss type deal as you get.
Extremely high floor, I would say. At the very least, you have a 6'6" shooter, which is hard enough to find as it is. And then you add in all of his potential as a defender, his length, his he can shoot off the dribble. He's not just going to sit there in the corner and shoot threes. He can get to that dribble pull-up game.
He's got that down.
And I just think that what do you see from him as far as like role in offense, like at Michigan, in terms of what Michigan State does? More of a 2, more of a 3?
I would think kind of that more of a 2 Gary Harris type role.
Mm-hmm. I think Gary Harris is a great comp as far as role. Obviously, he's taller than Gary Harris was and probably a little less athletic, but being able to run the break and then give you that shooting coming off of screens, everything else is probably the perfect fit, which is pretty elite piece to add to what Michigan State wants to do on offense, regardless of who else is there.
And yeah, we also don't know what they'll look like, right? I mean, if they've got a stud point guard, you're going to have some extra options with him. They might, who knows what's at the point. There could certainly be a scenario where they need him to be more of a lead guard. And I think I don't think that's a leap for him at all if that's what's needed.
Yeah, I think he has that. I think he's probably best if that's a luxury, not a like we need you to do this every time on the court, or you can show this off every 5 or 6 possessions. We'll put you in a ball screen, right? So great get. Should be probably one of the highest rated incoming kids in the Big Ten next year. And just to have that fit to go along with it is pretty perfect, I think.
And, I'll be curious what this, where does Pierre Brooks fit in this now? He's a 6'5" shooting guard, right? I'm sure these guys can play together, but this is going to end up being one of those classic scenarios where everyone's going to spend all this time talking about Bates and Christie and forget that like Pierre Brooks is like damn near a top 50 kid nationally. I don't think he is, but I'm pretty sure he's close. But, a great talent that is probably going to be overlooked now.
Yeah, overlooked just because he's not the 5-star McDonald's All-American. Sure, I think his production kind of speaks for itself. He's pretty much
say overshadowed, not
overshadowed. Yeah. I think Michigan State fans appreciate him and have been happy with his commitment. It's not like he's completely under the radar. I mean, he's put up huge scoring numbers basically his whole career. I think he's I think he fits fine with Christie. I know they're both like maybe similar heights, but Brooks to me is more of a downhill guy. Kind of finds his way to the basket, just plays hard. Whereas Christie's more of a plays off his shot. Brooks plays more of his ability to get to the basket. Just kind of like big picture wise. So I don't think that's a risk. I think you can't have too many 6'5" multi-dimensional pieces on offense. So I wouldn't be that worried about that as far as how they overlap.
And it could be great defensively because he's 6'5". He's got a lot of length. He's got a lot of versatility. They've got these kind of pro style wings, right? Who can guard multiple positions. They could really be, I think, more of a dangerous combination more than anything else.
Yeah, and it's just interesting looking at the Michigan State roster, how many upperclassmen could be there for that 21-22 season. But you could also look at the list and say maybe won't be there. And it's going to be really interesting. Are these freshmen in sort of immediate impact roles, or are they filling in around guys who have maybe been rotation players for years, right? Like it could be, are you turning the roster over, or are you building for one big run in that 21-22 year? That's really what it's going to come down to, as far as you could have 6 seniors on the roster, or you could have maybe 2 or 3, right? Like it's not impossible that there could be attrition in all different ways in that senior class. So I think it's still hard to say where the roles fall when we haven't really seen what the underclassmen other than Rocket Watts have really been at this level. There's a lot of potential. I don't know. What do you make of, I guess, Michigan State's roster that year and the needs versus what's there already? It's
so hard. I think they're ultimately going to pick up, I think, a commitment here from Jaden Akins, kid from Farmington, point guard, here sooner rather than later. you add that piece to the mix, and then you're like, well, what is this point guard situation looking like? You're talking about Watts, you're talking about AJ Hoggard, you're talking about Akins. Like, there's just kind of a lot going on in terms of July 7th, 2020 that, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of fool's gold to even really project how this could possibly look. I know that's kind of punning on the answer, but it's also like not just making shit up for the sake of it, because like if Rocket Watts is back that year, right, he's your guy.
Yeah, I think you look at Rocket, Hoggard, and Akins, and you'd say, well, man, I feel pretty good about our point guard situation that year because I think there's dudes who can play. I love Jaden Akins. I think Hoggard, people think has a lot of potential, right? So you have some insurance if Watts isn't there, and if Watts is there, well, there's no reason Akins and Hoggard can't play off the ball at times. Really, I don't look at having depth at that spot as a big problem, do you? You just don't think all those people will want to be on the roster at the same time?
That's my biggest question. Is like I'm looking at how this projects, and shit. Now throw Emoni Bates into it. Why not? Right? Like, okay, suddenly now you have the best player in the country on this team. Yeah, I have no idea how people would react to this kind of influx of talent.
Yeah, and throw Emoni Bates and Jaden Akins, and you're up to 15 scholarships.
Right, you're now well over.
For 13 spots, which, as we learned last year, talking about Michigan's recruiting picture can change pretty quickly. You can go from over the limit to well under the limit in
go pull up
hours.
Go pull up an episode of this podcast from this time last year and find us talking about the scholarship situation, and then see what actually came of it.
Go pull up a podcast from April. But yeah, I mean, you have a lot of talent on this 21-22 roster, and that's before we didn't even talk about Gabe Brown, Aaron Henry, Joey Hauser. All those guys could be on that team, which is just an unreal amount of depth.
I don't think I don't know if the rosters on the walls, the projected rosters, would have Aaron Henry and Joey Hauser on there. But yes, you're right. In theory, someone could get injured. Any number of things could happen. Someone could just not play that well, right, and need another year. Who knows? Joey Hauser hasn't played basketball in a long time. It's kind of it's a bit of a leap to just say he's going to come in and just tear shit up and suddenly become an NBA prospect next year.
It's not like Joey Hauser necessarily. Like, if you look up 2021 mock drafts, is Joey Hauser on those? Not necessarily. Obviously, there's an expectation he'll play well, but it's not like he's some slam dunk first round pick, right?
Right. We both agree on Akins, though, right? Most likely Michigan State.
Yes, and he will be playing with Emoni Bates this year at IFSC Prep.
Right. Get your popcorn ready, as the people say.
I'm not sure how much popcorn will be consumed in the state of Michigan when you're watching them play, but fair enough.
They got to get these games on TV, especially if we're on lockdown.
Any other Michigan State recruiting takes?
Man, I mean, let me ask you this. Like, in terms of the national picture, does this week at all change Michigan State in the pecking order of how people look at things?
So I keep seeing this narrative that Michigan State is somehow like recruiting way above its depth, so to speak, or this is like some sort of crazy development. Obviously Emoni Bates is different, right? And that, I guess, plays a big part into that narrative. But Michigan State basically lands like one top 40 kid, two top 70 kids every year, right? This isn't that crazy, right? You had Jaren Jackson, Miles Bridges, Gary Harris, who else? Cassius Winston. Like, I don't think this is that. Josh Langford was a 5-star when he committed, right? I mean, is it really that crazy for Max Christie to commit to Michigan State? Does that really, like, are people thinking Michigan State wasn't a recruiting powerhouse? Michigan State wasn't one of the best teams in the Big Ten?
The Bates, it's not Christie, it's Bates. Bates is the game changer. Bates changes the narrative.
Then I guess that narrative probably depends on what how likely you think Emoni Bates is going to play at Michigan State or not, right? And when it comes up nationally and says Emoni Bates commits to Michigan State, that's going to change that narrative because that's just what you see, right? So I don't know.
Right. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like, to your point, I don't know if whoever is going to be the number one kid in 2023, 2024, 2025, if they now become more likely to pick Michigan State. I don't know if that's a thing. But who knows? You know, if put it this way, if Emoni Bates actually goes and plays basketball at Michigan State, that is potentially a game changer in terms of the national trends of that level kid, the top 3 kid in the class, the kid who's the projected top 5 pick in the following year's draft. Like, maybe suddenly Michigan State enters that conversation. I don't know.
See, I don't buy that, and I honestly don't think that's what Michigan State wants. I think Emoni Bates gives you a chance, like playing a season with Emoni Bates would be a game-changing opportunity for Michigan State. It gives you a real shot at a national championship. That's all you can ask for. I don't think Michigan State is suddenly going to try to recruit the top 5 kids in the country every year because of all the headaches that come with that, because you're competing against all these other outside factors. I think Emoni was a unique situation where he's a local kid.
Right.
Yeah. That relationship was prioritized from the start, and Michigan State lives off of dominating in-state recruiting. That's the identity of the program. I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah. Fact is, if Emoni Bates grew up, just say an hour south,
anywhere else,
an hour south in Toledo, Michigan State probably is not ever even in the mix.
Yeah. I think that's a testament to how Michigan State builds its program. Right.
Right. All right. You want to hop over to Michigan?
Let's go.
I hope we're recording. I hope this thing's recording.
We're still recording. If the recording fails, we're canceling the podcast for good. So you guys better cross your fingers.
It's over. All right. So a lot of moving pieces at Michigan as well. What will need to be a large 2021 class is getting its
certainly growing.
It's getting, I think, I refer to them as foundational pieces. We'll see if you kind of agree with this line of thinking. But picking up commitments from Isaiah Barnes last week, right? Was it this week? Was that yesterday?
Will Tschetter committed on Monday.
Will Tschetter was on Monday, Monday morning, right? First thing in the morning.
5 a.m. local time. Probably the most incredible announcement time.
Respects. And no, the most incredible one was dude committing to Howard at 3:30 in the morning Eastern time.
All right, fair enough.
And it appears, I think he's announcing Friday, but by everything that I'm hearing, that I think Dylan's hearing, that pretty much anyone's hearing, is that Kobe Bufkin will most likely be committing later this week. So a class that's growing quickly and that has open spots. Even with those 3 commitments, they would still have 3 more open spots.
Yeah, depending on how you count, right?
Sure.
Sean D. Brown's waiver is a big flex point for a scholarship. Franz Wagner status. With both, if neither of those 2 are on the roster next year, you would still have 4 spots remaining. So I would look at Michigan's 2021 class and say it's probably going to have 6 guys in it. Seems like about the right number. And I think foundational. Go ahead.
I think it'll be like 6. 6 sounds right to me. It'll kind of be, I think, literally almost 1 in each position. And then 1 extra.
Yeah, I think the ideal fit would be you add Kobe Bufkin, who's more of like a playmaking 2, and then you add a point guard, you add a big, and then you add a super athletic wing, or basically the best player available to fill that out. And then you could even need more depending on what happens with the roster. So we want to go through these in the order they committed.
Sure.
Isaiah Barnes was first. He's a kid who actually played with Max Christie in AAU for the Illinois Wolves. Kind of under the radar. He, I think, only had one scholarship offer last summer. I believe it was from Illinois. It was one of the first big schools to offer him. But he blew up this season with his high school team, Oak Park River Forest. That's another example of a kid where, the competition level maybe isn't elite, but he took his game to a whole new level. The big thing with Isaiah Barnes is, how do you weigh the idea of his production, his potential? He's a 6'6" wing, can hit shots off the dribble. But when he was playing Under Armour last year, he did not really fill the stat sheet, right? So he's a guy who you see the flashes, you see what he can do, but you're still waiting for him to prove that he can do that kind of on an every game basis and be like a guy who you count on to give you the 20 points in a game, right? I think he's a perfect example of a guy you want to take a chance on early in a class. He has all the tools to be a really good Big Ten player. I just think there's a little more uncertainty as far as putting it all together and getting to that point.
Yeah, I mean, do you have a comp?
Do I have a comp? It's tough. I would say where he is in his development gives me kind of like a Ibby Watson vibe, maybe like a Tim Hardaway Jr., right? Like he's a long shot maker, and those guys can just go in different ways, right? Tim Hardaway was pretty raw at one point in his development, and then he kind of transformed his game. Ibby Watson obviously needed a little more time, but similar in the fact that they're 6'6" wings. They can hit shots, but they're also athletic enough to go and finish inside. So that's where I would kind of look as a comp. I don't know. I hate player comps, though, so disclaimer there.
I mean, it's when you look – one of the things is when you look at that 2021-22 roster, just on a passing glance, the thing that just jumps out at you is like who's making jump shots, especially if you take Franz Wagner out of the mix. Like they need shooters big time.
And I think he can be a shoot. Like I like his shooting ability. I think that's what he does. I know his numbers might not be crazy as far as shooting accuracy, but if you're going to take him and project him as a Big Ten player, I would say, he's going to be a shooting wing who can maybe be a secondary creator in spots, but mostly going to create for himself, maybe dribble into pull-up jumpers, stuff like that.
What were his final schools? Remind me.
Isaiah Barnes, he had an Illinois offer. He picked up a handful of offers over the last few months. DePaul, Georgia, who else offered him? Iowa, I think Iowa State, Kansas offered him, Maryland offered him. So he had a good list of offers. But again, it was very much one of those word of mouth things where, hey, this kid's lighting up his league, everyone take a look. And the offers came after his high school season. So he is transferring to, I want to say, Simeon. And so he will play much better competition this year during his high school season, which should be a good test because you're not really going to get to see him playing elite competition in the summer because right now there just isn't much summer basketball going on. So that'll be interesting as far as his development goes.
Okay. Because I asked that because when you look, I think, at these three for Michigan, two that we know, waiting potentially on this third, is I don't know if this might be a conversation for the end of this, but like these aren't big reaches. These are more kind of that, when Michigan enters the chat, it's a big deal.
They're not big reaches. Like Michigan's one of the biggest schools that offered all three. Right. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I also think when you say not a big reach, I mean, that makes me think they're not a big stretch to get to that level. But you mean they're not – I don't quite follow.
Yeah, I mean, you're not like with a lot of the kids that, Michigan's gone after since Howard came aboard. Some have been in that. There's been just a lot more of the, you're up against kind of like – not like-minded, but like level right? Schools, you're going up against heavy hitters for 5 stars, and these, I feel like, they identified kids that it'll be a big deal to go to Michigan.
Yeah, and this is something we've talked about. It might have been a podcast we lost, but when Juwan Howard got hired and basically came in a year ago, and he was obviously behind recruiting the class, whatever else, but he basically just offered every 5-star prospect in the class. And Michigan didn't really start offering players outside of the top 40 until very late in the process. And obviously they were able to flip Terrence Williams, and that was a player who's kind of in the same ballpark, right? He's a 75 to 125 ranked kid who is clearly a high major player, but maybe not clearly an All-American. And I think you can't build a roster of 13 5-star players. And Michigan's going into this 2021 class knowing it only has 4 players returning who aren't going to be freshmen this year. So you're going to need a shit ton of players, and you can't just shoot for the stars and go for all 5 stars and just hope that everything's going to turn your way when they all announce in the end of March, right? That clearly is not a viable strategy. So I do think that they're doing a better job of evaluating situations, prioritizing players who are attainable. And when you need to recruit a 6-man class, you're going to need to get some of those more attainable prospects. I think that's probably a fair way to put it.
Yeah. So let's get into Will Tschetter. Not spelled the way it sounds.
But we got the pronunciation on this podcast. We even practiced beforehand. This is
what we're known for.
I think this is a really interesting commitment because I'm not sure where he plays. I'm pretty sure wherever he plays, he'll be able to score. I mean, he is very skilled offensively. He shoots 45% from 3, obviously against not great competition. He doesn't play in a shoe-sponsored grassroots league. He plays in a small school in Minnesota, but I think he had like the 10th highest scoring average in Minnesota history this year. His mom is like a Division II Hall of Famer at North Dakota State.
3-time All-American.
3-time All-American. So
she was a Miss Minnesota high school player. Turned down multiple Big Ten offers to go to North Dakota State.
He's also a 6'9" quarterback. So he's a dual sport guy. Minnesota wanted to play tight end there. So really interesting player. It's tough when you have guys who, like we've talked about before, don't play the greatest competition, right? You're taking a chance, and it's very hard to project what that looks like at the Big Ten level. I like his potential as a stretch 5, but I think he's probably a little too small for that. And I like him as a scoring 4, but I think he's maybe a little too slow to guard a lot of players who will play the 4 in the Big Ten. So that's where you're kind of stuck in between two minds with him.
Yeah, I mean, defense is the hardest thing to project here. I feel like offensively, in a perfect world, he's kind of that high post 4 that you can play through a little, let him pass. It's a good defensive spacer because you have to guard him because he's a legit shooter. Really, I talked to him for, 45 minutes today. And first of all, he's one of the most interesting recruits that I can ever remember, right? Like the backstory here is crazy. I won't go through all of it because I need you assholes to pay for it on The Athletic. But he is, as a player, I feel like a guy who has like an enormous upside if it hits. And if it doesn't, it's like doesn't really harm you. He's going to come in. He'll be like an academic All-American. He's got a 3.999 GPA, got 1 A- in high school, but he's going to be a guy who can, make threes, come in. He'll give you something. Like, I feel like it's a high reward, low risk situation where, why not? This kid, for all you know, he could blow up a little bit because there is no real film on him. And if you watch him on tape, you're like, oh shit, this guy can do everything. But what is this competition? Because they've purposefully avoided playing up in the bigger shoe leagues or circuits, whatever. And he's not changing high schools, so it kind of this is what he is. But it's really hard to project. It's really hard.
Ryan James, one of the big Minnesota kind of local scouts out there, has spoken really highly of him. He and obviously I feel like that's probably the best candidate to kind of evaluate what's happening in that league, right? If you're really watching the state on a year-to-year basis, you kind of can say, well, this guy's doing this, and it would be against that. So he compared him to Ben Carlson, who's going to Wisconsin this year and is like a top 100 fringe kid. He feels like a guy who all of a sudden probably needs a redshirt year or just a development year, and then comes in maybe as a sophomore or junior, and you're like, where did he come from? And he's scoring, just doing all like he just feels like a Big Ten kid to me, the kind of kid who is the face-up four. I definitely think when you watch him, he plays like a face-up four. I just don't know what he guards. So that's the interesting fact. His shot looks funny, but the results are there. Runs the floor really hard. A lot to like. It's his lateral quickness for me. That's the big kind of swing skill. Right.
And also comes from good stock. Like you said, mom was a ball player. Dad played wide receiver at North Dakota State. I got really hyped before I realized the math didn't add up and that he wouldn't have taken passes from Carson Wentz or anything. But I mean, I don't know. The crazy thing about this commitment is just how quickly it happened. I mean, it was basically 2 to 3 months where it went from 0 to 100, and Michigan's never seen him live. It's all been over tape. Once they got tipped off to him and started looking into it, and from my recollection, I think an assistant at his high school sent tape to Michigan. They looked at it, they started pursuing it, then asked for like film of every single game, watched all the tape that they could get, and that's how the recruitment began. And then and that's it. No one has seen him in person at all.
He drove to Ann Arbor over the weekend.
He drove to Ann Arbor with his mother. They went through campus, and that was it, and committed. So, I think he was supposed, it might have even happened earlier, but he was supposed to visit Colorado and Colorado State or something like that. And that kind of prolonged things a little bit more. But
from the sound of it, Michigan's pitch was pretty much on another, I heard from the beginning pretty much that Michigan was in a very good spot, and that Juwan Howard Zoom calls that went very well and resonated as far as emphasizing family and everything else. Like he kind of hit the perfect note and stood apart from the rest. And Minnesota offered the same day. So Richard Pitino a little late to the party there in his own backyard. But
I mean, that's crazy. The guy scored 1,100 points last year.
But there might be a junior college transfer who comes on the market next spring that he's got to go after. You never know.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else I got on this kid other than
I think he's the perfect kid to take at this point in a large class. There's upside, like you said, and you're going to need big bodies. It's going to be Brandon John's last year. So it's a good fit overall. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, I think that's all I got.
I guess we can
for now
wrap up with a little Kobe Bufkin talk. I think he's worth talking about because he's a really intriguing.
Oh, by the way, the Tschetter kid, he wants to major in engineering. So
that was your major, right?
It was. With a double minor in English and journalism. So I believe would be the first engineering major since Jordan Morgan.
That's the last I can think of.
Double major, if I remember correctly. All right, Kobe Bufkin, sorry.
Kobe Bufkin would be the highest rated of these three commits if he commits on Friday afternoon or Friday. You
want to give his list real quick?
His top 5 is LSU, Michigan State, Ohio State, and DePaul. Michigan offered him in late April, I want to say. I think he was actually the third in-state recruit that Michigan offered. For my money, I think it's between him and Akins for the best 2021 in the state. I think I like their long-term potential a little more than Pierre Brooks. I think you'll see a lot of people, especially national people who see him in other environments, refer to Bufkin as a point guard. I really think he's a playmaking two with really good size. I think he gives you a lot of flexibility with who you put next to him. I think he is really good at ball screens, but he's more of a guy who can create his own shot first and then pass, not more maybe like a methodical point guard like you might see otherwise. But I love his potential. I think he's got up like a 6'7" wingspan, measured at 6'5", I believe, at Nike Elite 100 camp. You have any thoughts on his game?
Well, one of the thoughts I have on the surface is that it is important for Michigan to plant some kind of flag in this state. Like they need to have some recruiting presence here, because if you look at their list of kids, they're all over the place in terms of national recruiting, and you need to have a presence here. And I think it's important to have, at least one kid pretty much. If you're bringing in a 6-person class and don't have an in-state kid, I don't think that's a great look. So I think it's important from that perspective. And, yeah, I mean, your scouting report sounds about right to me. I mean, I've watched just basic tape on him, and I've wondered if he could play the one, like if that's something that he could grow into. But, yeah, I think scoring guard is more kind of on point now.
Yeah, I love his change of pace. I love how he kind of glides around the court where he doesn't look like he's ever trying too hard, right? And he gets to his spots first, so he's kind of deceptive like that. He's a guy who feels like if he were to develop into a pro, maybe they would look at him as a point guard, but in college, he's probably a shooting guard just because that's usually how it kind of plays out. I think Michigan would absolutely still go full steam ahead to land a point guard. I don't think he
no doubt
check that box, right?
They already are, yeah.
I think you would much rather say we don't really have much shot creation on the roster right now, and this kid fits because he can do some of that and play off the ball if you need. So he's a lefty, really good finisher around the rim, despite the fact that he's super skinny. Just a lot of intriguing pieces as far as what he could be, and he's already pretty good in his own right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm under the relatively educated opinion that Jalen Warley remains the point guard target in this class.
Yeah, and
then there are backups.
Yeah, and Warley's another guy who some people might call him a combo, but I think you'd rather put two guys who have some point guard skills together who are both 6'4" and say, yeah, we'll get that figured out more than,
right.
Well, is this good? No, it's just like tall playmaking guards are a weapon, whether they play any position, right?
And when I said, like, it could be, 5 guys, one basically in each position, I do think you could also see those guards, right? And then maybe one true-ish point guard, something like that, maybe a more bring it up the floor type guy. I don't know. Or it could just be a center. Who knows? But there's still a lot of names floating around out there at point guard. Do you want to get into some targets out there that Michigan has?
We can quickly. Where do you want to start? I guess
let's start here.
Start with the point guard. You said Jalen Warley. I think pretty clearly the top point guard target on the board right now.
In terms of backup plans, some names that I've kind of come across: Angelo Brizzi.
Brizzi. He is a elite shooter. He's another one of those guys who plays at a smaller school, had a monster season. Villanova offered him, and then everyone else offered him.
Right.
It tends to be how it goes.
And I'm not sure of other point guards. Carter Witt.
Yeah, I don't think he has an offer, but he's on the board. North Carolina kid,
I think that's very much on the board, is my understanding. Make your recruiting profile on UM Hoops.
He already has a profile. You can go check out his video if you want to study up for the next podcast.
Woo, girl! Man, all right. Well, take it away. Who else you want to talk about?
So I think those are Jaden Akins is on the board. I think we both think he'll end up at Michigan State at this point because he would be another lead guard candidate.
Any chance at Harrison Ingram?
Harrison Ingram and Matthew Cleveland are the two kind of big wings who are intriguing that would fit in the class. Both have been talked about a lot lately. Ingram's a high academic kid. I think Stanford is in pretty good there, which is probably the concern.
Mm-hmm.
I think those two kids fit basically anywhere.
There's a couple kids at IMG, right? Obviously.
Like half of Michigan's recruiting board is at IMG, whether it's the post-grad team or the high school team. Efton Reed and Charles Bediako are the two big men who are headed there. Reed actually did graduate, but he is going to play on the post-grad team instead of going to a college. So they'll be on the post-grad team, which is different than the team that Juwan Howard plays for. Juwan Howard's playing on the high school team, which also has Musa Diabate, who is another 5-star big in the class. And those are probably the top big man names on the board. You could obviously throw in Chet Holmgren, who I think listed the top 8, 7, 10, something. And Michigan is in there. But his AAU coach has been very vocal in touting the G League as an option for his players, for what it's worth.
For just all his players. Wow.
Well, for Jalen Suggs and for Chet Holmgren, his two players who could go to the G League, he'd probably tell everyone else to go too. He said, he's just been very outspoken about that, so that's worth noting. Any other bigs you want to throw out there on the board? One new name I saw today.
Is Nate Biddle basically done to Oregon?
Nate Biddle was the other name I was going to throw out, who was mentioned in Phil Martelli getting more involved there. West Coast kid, massive wingspan, can hit jump shots, would obviously fit in the center position. In the class. Yeah, top 10 kid.
Yeah, right. This is such some passing kid.
Michigan has been involved enough that he is mentioning Michigan now, and I think wants to decide in the fall before signing day. So another name to keep on the radar for the post players.
I don't know. I don't have any other names. You might.
I think like the 5-star dream names who are probably less likely by the day: Jaden Hardy, Trevor Keels, Patrick Baldwin, Michael Foster, Peyton Watson, all have Michigan offers. All are 5-star All-Americans. Not sure any are particularly likely at this point. Right. But you keep your hat in the ring because you have space, and they would be impact players.
That is true. So I'll make this point on the whole, foundational thing, right? You getting bodies is important when you have a class this size. Getting kids early on board, you having positions accounted for, and things like that is important because I do think it gives you some breathing room to take real runs at these guys. There's only so many hours in a day that you can spend recruiting. So when it comes to these top dudes, it's an, all in process. It takes a lot of work, but if you go all in and you don't have certain things accounted for, you can really shoot yourself in the foot if you miss on all your targets. So I do feel like by filling some of these spots out, it does at least position Howard and these guys to take runs and not, leave themselves open to, get bitten in the ass.
Yeah, and you're saying getting bodies. These are guys with multiple high major offers.
Take it easy.
If you get bodies in May and June, July, you aren't left trying to fill your roster out in March, April, May, when everyone acts like every player who comes available is really good. But in fact, if he was that good, you would have offered him in May, right? So being able to go ahead and take the guys you want and get the guys you want now is a much better position to be in than trying to fill your roster out after you miss, right? So if you have space to take these guys, and Will Tschetter or like these guys aren't scaring someone away, right? Like you're not going to be out of a recruitment because you took Isaiah Barnes or Will Tschetter or even Kobe Bufkin, right? Like you have to fill out the whole team. So I think it's definitely the right approach to recruiting for a class this big, because you're just not going to go top down and fill out a 6-man class. You might get 2 really good players, but then you forgot to recruit the rest of your class, right? You need like Michigan. We talked about Michigan State having potentially 6 seniors on that 21-22 roster. That's not the case at Michigan. You need to fill out that roster and get guys in there who can play and play in the Big Ten. And that's exactly what I think you're starting to see. And maybe you're not looking at, this guy's going to be a Big Ten, all Big Ten first team guy, but you need Big Ten players, and the more Big Ten players have, you can figure the rest out from there.
Yep. At this point, do you think Sean D. Brown, pronunciation corrected, Sean D. Brown.
Sorry, we deleted all the old podcasts.
better off in this year's team or 21-22?
I still think this year's team.
Fair.
I don't know if you're building through, like, I don't know. I mean, I think he's a pretty easy piece to fit into a team. You don't have to build a team around him, and he'll be a quality rotation player. I can see the experience factor, but I also think there's some guys who are going to want to play who are freshmen this year, and it would kind of create that weird situation we talk about with like Malik Hall and Joey Hauser, where Malik Hall's development then is going to be stunted a bit as a sophomore because maybe it's hard to get on the court with Hauser around, right? So I think if Isaiah Livers is back, you want Sean D. Brown on this year's team and just say, let's have the best team we can have this year.
I agree.
I don't think you bring a one-year guy in for a long-term plan. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's a win-win either way, right? If you have him for 21-22, great, because that team's young as shit, especially if Franz is not there. But I agree with you. Put the best team on the floor that you have possible, like, in now, right? Everything's so fluid with the way bodies move around, and who knows what's going to happen with the transfer rule and stuff like that. I think you just kind of got to go with what you got. And if they can get the waiver, then it makes sense for him to, or he would be the best option for this year's team.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any doubt, unless you're going to say, well, what if the whole season gets canceled or anything else, but that's for another podcast. So I don't know. Any other final takeaways before we pray that this recording actually works?
I'm trying to think of insightful, smart things that we said on those other 2 pods, and I can't remember a single thing of any value.
Good news is the men of Mackey are holding tough here in the TVT. You might want to turn to ESPN after we wrap this up. It's about to be a little Elam ending action.
Man, what do you think about that?
Not
you think it should be implemented into anything else?
Hard sell.
Wow. I feel like usually you're open-minded for this stuff and you like shit like this. And then I'm the old stick in the mud. That's like,
hard sell. I'm not for it. I know smart people all like to pretend like they like it. No, that's not basketball. Just stick to I like buzzer beaters. I don't like game-winning shots. How about that?
Wait, what?
I don't like just because you get how it works, right?
Yeah.
So I don't like just, this is the winning possession because we scored. Like it's a walk-off. I don't like the walk-off unless it's an actual buzzer beater. I don't like, we're just going to run off its possession and then win the game. I'm not here for it.
Fair. Who is your pick at Murfield Village this weekend?
Oh, geez. I haven't even looked at the field. You're the reporter. You tell us the winners.
You don't know what your DFS or whatever the hell it's called team is going to look like?
I haven't looked.
I think I like Koepka this week.
Koepka. All right. Everyone go put your bets down, and then when you lose your money, blame Brendan.
That's fair. Koepka, Hovland, again. I'm just going to keep picking Hovland until he wins. My guy, Chris Kirk, I have a story running on him soon. I'd appreciate it if all the people that gave us shit for not having a pod would also do me a favor and go read this golf story. I'm going to need it.
But what if they know that the reason there was no pod is because you were out covering golf, playing golf, covering golf?
Yeah, but you have to support our jobs to support the pod.
That's true.
So subscribe to Hoops, subscribe to The Athletic, hit them straight, and be sure to tip your bartenders and your servers.